Okay, it is May 15th at 6 o'clock, and we're going to start the curriculum and instruction meeting. In attendance are myself, Beverly Aldring.
Tanya Bell.
Kristen Thompson.
Angela Owens.
Greg Cooper.
All right, so the first item on the agenda is the Summer Academic Connections enrollment. I assume that we're getting an update on the numbers.
Exactly, just wanted to keep you up to date on the numbers. Currently, we have a total of 194, which is up from last year. And Mrs. Hefter had her initial meeting with the teachers who are going to teach in Summer Academic Connections. You guys hear me okay?
It sounds everything sounds weird
It's-
to me.
There's a lot of air.
All right. But I'm loud enough now?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
close, okay.
Do we know an approximate number of kids in each class?
I do. I do have it broken down per class, but
Okay.
I summarized it. It's 109 students from the primary center. I'll give you the breakdown.
Okay.
Pre-K is 32, kindergarten 48, first grade 29, second grade 27, third grade 14, fourth grade 14, fifth grade 9, sixth grade 9, and then 7th through 11th, 12. And that's right on track with last year and any other year. It just goes down as you get older.
Okay.
But again, it is higher than last year.
And it's just one teacher per grade?
The lower grades have 2. It depends, but they...
Like in second grade with the 29, that's not one teacher?
Correct.
Okay.
And kindergarten has 48, so...
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know exactly how many she has, but she
Okay.
goes down.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to focus on like math and reading.
Correct.
Okay. And kindergarten registration update?
Same thing, just an update, and strangely enough, as of today, 116 are enrolled, and last year at this time, 116 were enrolled. I don't know how that worked out, but it did.
All right. The school climate committee update?
Yeah, I just wanted to update you. So as you may recall, all of our buildings have a committee that focuses on their individual building climate. And that's in order for us to focus on making sure we have a positive school climate so that all stakeholders feel that sense of belonging. So every building has surveys going to their students, their staff, their teachers, and from there, their committees analyze the data and they decided on something as a committee that they want to work on. It could be something just very small, just to continue to work on that positive school climate. So we also formed a district-wide committee, and we wanted to look at the district as a whole and look at that data to see if there were any trends. And what we decided as a committee was to focus on community and family engagement. Because most of the buildings were focusing on student and staff. We decided across the board, let's focus on that family engagement piece. So one of the ideas that started to kind of bubble up was the idea of having family nights throughout the school year, maybe 3 family nights where we could have different sessions and things like that. And as we continued to talk about it, we decided that we want to have something late September, something very informal and welcoming, like something with food trucks and music, and to put informational sessions and tables out, not something real formal, just information, just get people talking and communicating. And all the buildings could each have their own table. Community organizations could have tables. Our clubs could have tables. Our sports, our music, just something very friendly and fun, getting everybody just to come to the event, K through 12. So we're tossing that around and trying to get as much feedback as we can before our next meeting. That's why we're bringing it up here. And that way, at our next meeting I guess it's next week, we can start to really hone in on it. This is what we want to do. We also talked about during the night, we would have students, high school students go around with surveys to say, hey, what do you want to see at a night like this? Do you want to see homework help for parents? Do you want to see how to talk to my child about X, Y, Z? We kind of get some feedback from the community at that first one. So that's what we're looking at.
Okay. PACT participation.
So this, and I will hand you something in a second. We have been invited to participate in a study, and it's being funded by the U.S. Department of Education, but it's a project called PACT, and that stands for Promoting Accelerated Comprehension of Text. So I'll say it again, Promoting Accelerated Comprehension of Text. And its focus is to examine the degree to which this intervention that they want to use increases student understanding of content, reading comprehension, and motivation and engagement. We are in the preliminary talks with this, so we most likely will be the control group, meaning there will be another group that will be the group that's getting
The actual participants.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we won't have the intense coaching that the other group will have, the treatment group that's getting me. But the cool thing is that after the study, we would have access to materials and resources and everything that treatment group received. So it's really great professional learning that we would be exposed to. Now this is only for our 8th grade social studies, so it's very small population of our teachers, but we always want that integration between literacy and our content areas, and we always are trying to find ways for our ELA teachers to work together with, like our social studies or our science. There's subjects where there's a lot of content, but there's also it's a great way to get that literacy piece in there. So I will pass this MOU around. There's no cost to the district. But again, it's a way for our teachers to enhance their literacy instruction and really support our teachers in motivating the students, increasing engagement, improving our students' reading skills. Again, it's only for 8th grade. I'll show you the copy of the MOU for you to look at. And we also want to have our solicitor review this prior to doing any kind of moving forward. We want to make sure everything's approved by our solicitor. So we're going to do this. This is the MOU that they will need to sign.
Thank you. Is this something that you investigate, or did they approach us, or?
It was actually originally the Berks County Intermediate Unit
Okay.
asked people to be a part of. Now, the thing was, if you had to meet certain criteria, meaning
I was going to say, why didn't we get picked?
right, you had to, and also, let's face it, sometimes a lot of districts don't want to do things like this because it's a little extra work, and it's, everybody's feeling like they're here, but something like this is a really great way to learn how to help students with their reading comprehension. Grade 8, and really looking at these books that are factual textbooks, and how to really read for understanding.
Okay.
So, but anyway, the Berks County Reading Unit put it out there first, and had to be teaching a certain topic. So like our 6th grade couldn't do it because they weren't teaching this topic, but our 8th grade could because they were teaching the topic.
Okay. And is the topic still included if we go through with the recommendation of the 8th grade textbook?
Yes.
It's still
Yes,
covered.
it's
That's
still-
what.
It's the.
Okay. Not to skip over you, Rob Flowers, but
It's the American Revolution. It's in there somewhere.
okay. No, I just want to make sure that it's still, because you said that textbook aligned with
Yeah.
our current curriculum map, correct? Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
So I would like to put it on the committee of the whole for June.
Okay,
To be able to be voted on, so that we can just go.
that's fine. Is that going to be able to be looked at by Brian before then?
I would think so. Yeah.
We all look to Hurley. Never mind. Is it okay? I don't know what his timeline is. So. Okay. All right. Department of Community Relations and Equity Awareness.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa Flowers.
Good evening, everybody.
Hi.
May I stand up, please?
Yeah, how about it?
So I want to say good evening, everybody, and thank you all for letting me come out and just speak about what has been happening in my department throughout the course of the 22-23 school year. I just want to give you an overview of some things. I want you to pay attention to some of the pictures that are on the screen because it's a lot of the work that we do, especially, at the bottom there. I work, and we work with a lot of people. People from all walks of life, man, and as we continue to dive into this work, we continue to work with different types of people within our own community. Older people, younger people, people with disabilities, people with that are socioeconomically on the lower end. So all that stuff is so important as we continue to grow. I never have a discussion with students, staff, or community members without reminding everyone that we are representing the Daniel Boone Area School District and what our core beliefs and values are, as I think it's very, very important to always keep that at the forefront of the work that I'm doing, that we're doing, that everybody is doing within our school district. I always say, acceptance and respect starts with each individual as you meet them, as you speak to them, as you take a deeper dive with them. We as individuals are constantly communicating to make sure that we're all working together to get the best things that our students, families, and our staff need in order to continuously grow. Celebrating specific successes is so important. I firmly believe people get tired of the emails that come from me, and I'm okay with that. It's important that we constantly put out what's happening to a point so that people understand that this is how we have to move as a district. Critical thinking and problem solving. One of the greatest things I learned as a young professional was my boss at the time said, "Don't come to me, Rob, don't come to me with a problem without a solution." So I always try to keep that in front of my work too, is because we have a lot of things that happen, whether it's an equity case that involves students dealing with race or students dealing with some disability, whatever it can be, a young student, older student, whatever it may be, but we always have to make sure that we're always problem solving. Then we're talking about mutual learning mindsets. I think that's so important as we constantly work to have positive outcomes for everybody involved that we have within our district. I always like to remind everyone what our mission is from our Community Relations and Equity Awareness Office. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but it has everything to do with working with people. It has everything to do with keeping our hearts and minds open, as I always say. The more we open our hearts, it allows us to accept and take deeper dives on individuals we may not know or may not be comfortable with. And the more we open our mind, it allows us to just share and learn. It allows us to share more about ourselves, it allows us to learn more about ourselves and learn more about others. So this next slide is so important. This is the work that we do. I'm going to break down and talk about each one of these numbers or words that we have up here, but I just want everybody to be reminded that I'm leading with my heart from this office, and that's what I've been doing since the 2020-21 school year. It's just happening at a much more loving pace when I'm dealing with and working with younger students, older students, community members, the staff. It's just part of who I am and what we're doing. So I'll start up here in the top left. That's our Freshman Leadership Network. I just completed my second year doing the Freshman Leadership Network classes. This year we actually focused on equity as individuality, which has been my topic for student discussions, staff discussions, and community discussions. We're just focused on who am I as one of the three fundamental questions. Who am I? What makes me unique? And what do I represent? So our students were able to complete a final project from our FLNs, which was focused on that component. And throughout our conversations, we got to share so much. Students presented, students helped each other out. So I get to hear two more classes present their final project this week. And it's been so cool, man, just to see the students take a deeper dive on themselves and then hear about other people. And that's a big deal, man. We don't want students to forget about that. The jacket. The second year that I'm lying, it's the third year that I have gone down to the Intermediate Center and spoke on the jacket. This is the first year that I was able to do it in 2 different classrooms. The jacket is a book that's built around some race-related issues, kindness, and acceptance. Those are the 3 main topics that the book is built on. And that is when we go down and we have a nice little discussion about the book to the point where we had 1, 2, 3 different families opt their child out of having a discussion with myself after the class read the book. And in the one class, the student was not in the book, but she chose to do an alternative assignment. And her alternative assignment was she drew a picture of one of the quotes that I used, but she had no idea it was one of the quotes I was using from the book. And the quote was from the grandma in the book that said, when you have something nice to share, you must share it. So she drew a nice little picture of that. So, I thought that was pretty powerful. I wanted to make sure I shared that. I'm going to jump down here to where it says 10, 43, and 50. 10 is the number of equity cases that I had in my office in the 2020-21 school year. 43 is the number that I had in the 2021-22 school year, and 50 is the current number of equity cases I have in the 22-23 school year. So I want to go back and I want to make sure that we take a deeper dive on those a little bit. If you look, in the first 2 years, a lot of the incidents came from our high school. Right now, incidents are coming from our intermediate center and our middle school. So, the number's high, Rob, yes it is. And then why are they coming from our intermediate center or middle school? So what's taking place here is, I particularly want to go back to 43. So statistically, when you look at numbers, when you bring awareness out, your numbers are going to shoot up. So I don't think we had a lot of people reporting things from 10 from the first year. Then students start to report, staff start to report, so we're able to look at things. And our incidents were more severe last year at the high school with race-related topics than they were any other year. Right now, we're looking at the 50, and I must say, and I mentioned this to Dr. Cooper, Mr. Hurley, and Ms. Owens before, I'd much rather have that number right now where we are at 50 at our IC in our middle school than that 43 at the high school. Last year, 43 at the high school, I want to say 5 of those were fights with high school students that led to suspensions and or expulsions. Right now at the IC, we are literally dealing with, we're going to say, level 1 infractions by students that requires us to engage in an educational component, and then if there's an intervention from a punitive-based measure that we will do so. Now, I'm talking little things like, hey, Mr. Flowers, you look like the Black Mr. Clean. And like I said, it's racial-related things. So at that age of 4th grade, fourth grade at the IC, and then 5th grade or 6th grade at the middle school, those are the type of things that we're dealing with. And myself, Mr. Becker, Mr. Towers, and Ms. Dombrowski have done a very good job of just identifying it and making it a point to educate our students about alternative words that they can use so that they can be impactful as we move forward. So one of the things that we make sure we do is we've been looking, and I've looked at, we've only had 3 repeat offenders this school year. That's pretty good. 3 repeat offenders this school year as opposed to 43. I think the young man's name was probably on there 5 times. So we had 3, and one of those just happened within the last week because we just talked about it, of course. So that's why it happens.
Rob, not to interrupt you, but the first 2 numbers are from the high school for the past 2 years, and now
not just the high school. The high school led the way. So I'm going to say in 2000.
Oh, I was like, well, what happened to high school this year?
Yes,
they have 0?
Had 7 out of 10.
Okay.
And the 43, I think last year they had
Okay.
19, 20 or something like that.
Okay.
So the names that I have up there is who led the way in the cases.
Okay.
So we constantly just look at that, and the 3 repeat offenders, we feel like what we're doing is working. We have to make sure that we constantly look at it. I then want to jump to just the 450. There's been 450 plus communications from our office throughout the school year, whether it's newsletters or resources or sharing positive things that are happening within the school district. We're constantly keep doing that. This year, I went from a newsletter once a month to a newsletter once a quarter. And throughout the quarter, I constantly try to update and share different things that are happening from the equitable lens, holidays, observances, from the school district. I just try to share and continuously try to spread the awareness of what's taking place. Community discussions. I've had 3 of these this year. Again, we went from the equity roundtables that were virtual for 2020 up until 2022 to a once a quarter community discussion. We decided at the beginning of the year we were going to have them in each building. We started off with our first one here at the high school in October. Our second one was at the middle school in, I want to say, January. And our third one was at the IC here back in March or April. Then we have our last one coming up at the PC next week down at the IC. or PC, sorry. Constantly using PDE, the equity inclusion page, to get the information that I'm sharing, to get the information that I get resources from. They provide us with an abundance amount of resources. So I find it very important to constantly use that, share that, and reference that, along with our district's already established mission, vision, core values, and beliefs. I think that's important. This year we had an OCR case. Our OCR case, the Office of Civil Rights, we wrapped that up this year. It was with us since 2020. Dr. Cooper, we wrapped it up, did you say?
Still waiting on the outcome.
Yes. So we had this case since 2020. August of 2020, we got this information, and this has helped align our work to be in alignment with what OCR wants, what PDE wants. So we're constantly doing things that are able to benefit our students, benefit our families, to make sure that we are treating everybody with a high level of respect. So just want to take some time and share. Does anybody have any questions, comments for me? Anything?
I do.
Okay.
So this is like anti-bullying is what you go after because based on race or whatever. So my daughter came home from school today and said on the bus, the kid picks on her friend because she looks at a boy and calls her transgender. So that's a case.
Yep, that would be a
You
case.
see a lot of that right now.
We do see some of that right now. So can I ask what age or what grade?
She's in 6th. This is middle school.
That's back to our middle school. So between the middle school buses and the IC buses, it's been a lot of the buses, but that is something we would deal with.
Have you guys ever thought about have you ever seen those public speakers that come in and I don't know, they're like motivational anti-bullying? Because I think bullying is probably the biggest problem we have, right? And
It is one of our.
I mean, it's always going to be there,
Correct.
but I don't. We hear it all the time, and it's probably worse now because transgender. It's in their face all the time.
No, that's definitely something we have talked about, or we can continuously look into. When we have situations like that, we always encourage the student and their staff and their family to please report it to our administrator within the building. Because if they don't, we don't know it's going to happen. Now, you just told me this, so I'm going to follow up tomorrow to see. That's just what I do. I'm going to follow up tomorrow to see if they heard anything. And we're going to do our best. We have to investigate. We investigate everything. I think that's why our numbers are so high too. We literally investigate everything that that comes across our desk. Yeah.
So that leads up to expulsion
Or it leads up to whatever the intervention may be, both educationally and punitively, whatever it may be. So, we always go with our policy and procedures for whatever the bullying was or whatever the harassment is, and then we just go from there. But we always add the educational component as well. Yeah.
What anti-bullying policy do we use? Not policy, but do we have a specific program that we use, or is it just kind of?
A specific program that we use, so we always do what's in line with PDE, so we're still using No Place for Hate in high school and middle school. We're still using, I want to say down at the VC, it's like second step, or there's so many. Obeys. Yes, Obeys.
Do you see that that's working, or is it not?
I think it's all working. I just think it takes so much time to get it done. So the programs that we're doing are working because I think everybody is trying our best to work together.
Because I'll tell you, when I went door to door, that was the number one thing people talked about was
bullying.
And how bad it's got. And so I just wonder if there's maybe something like, she said, is there some way we can kind of, I remember being in high school and having those kind of speakers come and talk about that.
Gotcha.
I don't know if there's a way we can do something.
I also think that, it's just like Rob said, because these discussions are happening more, you see more instances come up. When people don't report them, there's nothing that we can do. It's a lot of students, they are fearful to speak up. So, when Mr. Flowers is having these discussions, let's the students feel safe and know that it's a safe place, yes, you can speak up. So that's the only way that any of our administrators will listen to anything about it. So,
Awareness.
in addition to what you said, our middle school, all of our students, especially going into that IC and higher, our society is not helping the case with all the pressures that they have. So that's how we're trying to make sure we can build them up as an individual too, so that they have that confidence to stop doing that to me, stop doing that to somebody else, because it's a lot. It's all like it's a lot, and we're constantly looking at ways that we can make it better for each individual student and as a whole.
Is it the guidance counselors, do they have a part in this, I'm guessing?
Yes, because they get a lot of the day-to-day stuff, so they're in communication with everybody as well.
So when we say,
We're doing the best we can to do all of that.
so when we say we're using the Olveus, what does that mean?
So it says we're using the Olveus. So there are some guidelines and different ways that we can go about interacting or engaging with students that are displaying some bullying things or bullying behaviors. And part of that is having students work on peer-to-peer interactions.
So it's reactive but not proactive.
Proactive, be responsive. So if we're having students work on proactive peer-to-peer engagement, that can be responsive for when there's a negative situation that takes place. I guess it just depends on where you catch the student,
Right.
catch the incident within the process of the negative behaviors being displayed.
I just didn't know if it was like a program that like once a month they go over some lesson in whatever class. It's nothing like that. It's just a theory for handling it, how you deal it. Okay.
I'm not going to say theory. There's some evidence-based stuff behind it. So it's one of those practices, like I said, like you just said as well. Depending on where we catch it, it's how effective it can be.
Also, like Mrs. Green said, the counselors do lessons as well.
That's what I meant. Is there something that like other than that
Yeah. And also the teachers need to put that into their day, especially at the elementary ages.
Uh-huh.
And they can just integrate that right into their lessons with kindness and respect and
right?
accepting others.
Are we working on teaching the younger children on regulating emotions? Because I think that's one of the things our society is serious about. In self-regulation. Understand what my emotions are, how I take that out into the world, but then also understanding when somebody else is angry, how do I respond to that? Because that's what we're seeing a lot of that, especially with school shootings and things like that. They don't know how to get that, whatever they're getting that feedback from, they don't know what to do with it. And so I think if we can take that and teach them when they're young, how to regulate that and understand that.
I can tell you.
If you go into any of our elementary classes, you'll
The kindergarten, my daughter's in kindergarten, her teacher sends home every week social emotional learning, and this is what we learned. Like last week it was fairness or whatever. So I feel like at the elementary level they do hit on that, but big time. But I think middle school is the biggest problem. But no matter what you do with these kids,
Middle school, what happens that it kind of stops. That's what I'm
because they're teenagers.
It's a combination of age, generation, and feeling themselves, finding themselves. But the conversations have to be from the proactive base. So the teachers and staff,
I'm just coming from the side, I'm a behavior specialist in training.
Gotcha.
So I'm coming from that side of it, seeing actually what's happening
Yep.
with these ages and with these kids.
Right.
I'm seeing the other side of it. And that's why I bring it up.
So how many infractions does it take to have a kid removed?
It depends. It could take one. It just depends on what the infraction is based on policy.
Okay. Because I hear of like a repeat offender and like everybody in the school knows who this person is,
It depends. It depends what the infraction
and
is.
people are like, why is she still here?
It really depends. Like I can't say there's a one size fits all, even with our policy procedure, but it just depends on what the infraction is. And that's just standard for the government.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and the last thing on the list is the social studies textbook recommendation.
I'll just open up the floor to you because I pretty much said everything I have to say. I answered any questions that were addressed to me prior to today. So if there's any other additional questions that you need answers to, I would have been happy to answer them up until now. But I can still answer them tonight.
Well, Austin, what do you recommend?
What do I recommend? It's okay. Those of you who don't know me, I'm Austin Peterson. This is my 19th year teaching at Daniel Boone. Makes me feel old when I say that. But so 19 years teaching. Every single one of those years, I've taught the US 1 class. Other years, I've taught seniors, I taught the freshmen, but pretty much every single year, I had the 10th grade US 1 class. A couple years ago, with Mr. Hurley and a group of us, we put together a realignment of the curriculum that lines up with state standards, where we moved early American history, like colonization, revolution, drafting of the Constitution, and so forth. We moved that to the 8th grade level. And that allowed us to then realign the curriculum, which hadn't changed since I was in school here in 1995. I was in 10th grade. So what happened since 1995, we've added, 30 years of history. And so to get that all realigned and so forth, that beginning of American history and forming that foundation is now being moved to 8th grade. Those students who have finally got that curriculum in 8th grade a few years ago are now in my 10th grade class. This is the textbook that I kind of have a classroom set of that I use, and this one's a little nostalgic to me because when I open it up, my name's the second name in the book when it was issued to me as a student. Now, it's a good book, it's got good information, but it doesn't have any of the modern components with it that, I mean, kids are trained today, like they're 30-second TikTok videos, like that's what you're competing with, or 1-minute YouTube videos, and so forth. The newer textbook, both of the textbooks we reviewed aligned with our curriculum. They provided brief videos that can be shown to the students, and sometimes it's nice to have a physical copy there that they can look at, but then you have someone go home for a period of time, they have an electronic copy at home, and so forth. So I think unless the plan changed that we have like the classroom set, and so the classroom set of physical books along with all the online and electronic components that go with it, I feel like it would really just, it would freshen our instruction and help us engage the students at a higher level than what we have right now.
You find to be, I can really speak for what I see going to be kids. They don't read books. They read books, but they're electronic. I mean, so I might love the paper, but who gets the newspaper anymore? Maybe my mom still gets the newspaper, but I don't get the newspaper. I get the newspaper online. So that's always when I struggle with this book. And then the 80-pound bag that they had to bring on break in the back.
Well, kids.
I get it. I just wondered if you find
what I find is, so if I'm giving out, like, I'll call it a guided read. Like, there's a passage I want them to read. If I just say, hey, read this, we all know how that's going to end up. So it's, hey, read this. Can you I want you to find these key answers, or depending on the level, it might be just they're filling in blanks. A higher level student, they're going to be a comprehension and synthesis style questions. But when I give a worksheet out, like, hey, you guys, this is what we're doing the first 20 minutes of class here, I can say, if you want to use a physical copy, you're going to go on this page. There's an electronic copy available for you, and so forth. And I'd say about half the kids actually go and they grab a physical book. And how much is that? Now, they don't want to carry that book home. They don't want to take it to the next class. They don't want to go to their locker. But if we have a classroom set that those students can utilize while they're there, but then also the electronic component, you're covering all the bases there. And that will ultimately, I think, can pass the wire there. So.
And you feel like this curriculum is like more interactive, like the kid that doesn't learn very well by just reading a book would learn easier with this curriculum.
It's broken up into, I don't want to say smaller segments, but it's especially when you interacted with the online portion of it, it's like what would be the equivalent of half a page of information would come up. And then there might be a brief video, like a 2-minute video that goes with it. And it has, there's questions through there. So as opposed to like this is very intimidating to some kids. Like, there's 1,000 pages in this book. You know, where am I even going? You know, it seems to be more focused in essence. You know, and it would, since the pandemic, you know, when we were virtual, we're back, we're this, that, you had kids at home, you had kids in person, like, we really had to scramble and just throw whatever we could together in many regards. That becomes risky, because then that's 4 or 5 teachers teaching that subject that are all just kind of grab what they can, yeah, we collaborate, but at the same time, you know, this, I feel, would be like a cornerstone. We all had our own little stories and our own little, you know, I have goofy stories that I tell different than what Mr. Snaglinski tells, but, you know, that enrich the curriculum. But this at least would be the bedrock of us being uniform across the grade.
Hear you say, and I'm not even familiar, hear you say that you want to teach them the way they like to be taught today. It's changed.
It's difficult. Like and in the last 4 years, I mean, this is, I'm sure anyone in education would agree, the last 4 years changed more than the first, you know, 15 that I taught. And it was just, it's a lot different. But I think, I mean, as you were discussing, kids' brains are wired differently. It's because of how they get information. It's how, you know, I know my daughter, like, to have her sit down and like watch a movie halfway through, it's like clockwork. We're 40 minutes in. How much is left in this movie? You know, and it's the attention span's not there. I remember when I first started teaching, or when I was a kid, the best day was when they rolled into TV. Like, all right, we got a 40-minute movie today. You know, if I put a 40-minute movie on, I would lose it right away. You know, your worksheet, reflection beats, whatever, it just wouldn't happen. So. We reviewed the 2 options. They were very comparable to each other, and you know, I think dare I speak on behalf of my department, but it would really be nice if we had something fresh to work with.
And I think that really, another thing I really like about this program is it really introduces students to the multiple points of view from both primary sources. There's a lot of primary sources in that. In social studies, that's really what you want to use. And it really references those primary sources. And it's not right in the book, it at least references it. So you can go out and look on their iPads for that. Again, this is a resource, and like Austin said, we're going to use other substances besides this to kind of supplement. But I just really appreciate that they have both primary and then the textbook being a secondary source.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of history is so content driven, where like math is skill, like you're learning a skill. Like, yes, you get the theory behind it, but you're learning a skill. You know, some of the sciences are very skill based. Like, history is so content driven that it's like to produce that and to tell that story of our country. You know, you shoot from the hip with it, or even you know, it doesn't do it justice.
So what are you guys doing to teach the last 30 years?
Well, I'm teaching Vietnam today, so then it like, unfortunately, it becomes okay to, you know, Vietnam War, you know, here it is. And it's like, then...
Like 9/11.
Well, and that's the issue, that's the other issue. And this will be, next year will be the first time, the 11th graders, where I'll have more time. Like, I can take a deep dive into Vietnam. I can take a deep dive into the 70s and the everything that went on then, and then the conservatism of the 80s, and then, I mean, we got to remember the kids I have in class today weren't even born when 9/11 happened. It might as well be the Spanish-American War, and you know, so it you know, it will allow me to get deeper in that. And so ultimately, over the next 5 classes I have with my students, like, there's a day that I'm like, okay, we're Bush, Clinton, Bush. You know, we're getting them in. You know, and it's very much, unfortunately, like Cliff Notes. You know, okay, 9/11. This is what happened. Here are the major players. You know, so.
Because we don't have that in our curriculum, or because
well, it's simply that adjustment of time won't happen until next year. Because now the 10th graders, my 10th grade class right now is wrapping up where my current 11th grade class was around Christmas. So now that opens up months of that. You know, now that that's the US 2 curriculum, the US 2 curriculum, you'll actually really get to dig from the 1950s to today, where it's very much, okay, World War II, fighting communism in the Cold War, and then it's like...
So our US 2, how old are those books?
They are newer.
Oh, they are newer.
They are newer. But I do feel that one of the good things about this is this will also cover through the US 2 curriculum. So if you think about my classroom where I'm teaching US 1 and US 2, a classroom set covers both classes.
Yeah, if you recall, that if we get the Savas textbook, it has more stuff that we can use in our classes. It has a little bit more stuff. So that's what also what that is too.
So, it would really just be nice to have something a little fresh to go with here. So,
I think I mentioned this last time, but I was able to hear back from 2 other school districts, and both positive feedback. Nothing negative except for the size of the textbook, which is when somebody said about saying children will not be taking this book home. I mean, unless it's a case where the child is home for a few pieces, you know, he or she's sick, the parent wants to pick something up, but it's big.
So what are we using for US 2?
What's that right now?
What curriculum? Are we using the same?
So if we get this, it's possible for them to use this as well.
Because we're just voting on US History 1 and Grade 8, right?
Right, we're voting on using the Savas textbook under this.
But the current curriculum for US History 2 is...
So it's not the current curriculum, it's just the resource. It's just the textbook. So our curriculum changed.
it was, so the current 10th graders were in 8th grade when the plan went into place. And that was a rewriting of the curriculum that was aligned with the state standards. And so now, so we didn't miss like wide swaths of history. We then we waited until those 8th graders became 10th graders. Now those 10th graders right now will be 11th graders, and the newly aligned curriculum, and it really is the scope and sequence. It's not, it's allowing us, like I said, I'm finishing my current 10th grade class where my current 11th grade class was around Thanksgiving. So like we're moving in essence a whole quarter is what it ends up doing. So that opens up 4th quarter in 11th grade next year.
Okay, so at this time, are we just going to be moving that onto the agenda then, Angela?
And that's what I would recommend.
It's
Okay.
on the agenda for tonight.
Oh, well, look at that.
Yeah.
There you go.
But but we were leaving room if there was an issue coming out of committee, we could remove it. But that's up to you guys.
I see an issue in the audience. Shane, you want to come up? Huh?
Shane Narble at Fairview Town Road. It is very, very difficult to hear you guys with that.
I don't know why it's so loud.
So, I can hear you perfect. But some of you other guys, if you're not speaking into your microphone, it's almost impossible to hear you. My question is on the finance part of the curriculum that you're looking into. After 6 years, the one that you're recommending, it costs around $100,000 for the 6 years. What happens after the 6 years? This was my question the last time, and
I know you're asking.
Yeah.
So basically, those 6 years, so that money is divided out over the 6 years.
Right.
So you keep the $80,000 divided up by 6, that number states that we won't have to buy textbooks necessarily. I mean, obviously they're going to, the digital part of it, they do update that. And they might not, they can't update the textbook that we have. They will update the digital. That's what happens with certificates of success.
Right, so at year 7, how much is it costing the district?
How much is what license?
The program?
$85,000 over 6 years.
He means after the 6 years we paid the $85,000. He wants to know what happens in the 7th year. What are we paying? We're not paying anything unless we get something new.
Well, no, and then we just keep paying for the licenses. So let's say it's $8,000 per year, and we continue to buy the licenses.
Okay, so the license is going to be different than the overall cost?
Correct.
Okay.
It's like a certain number times the number of students that you have that you need the licenses for.
Okay, and you're saying it's 8,000?
I'll look it up.
I mean,
Because I don't know.
It's like, like less than 10% of the cost of whatever.
I'm just thinking at year 7, it could be, $15,000.
We can always cancel it then, right? Like we don't.
But then you have to go through this whole process again. And
But you know what, that is what you do though, with a true curriculum review cycle, that is what you do. You review it, you say, did it work for us? If it's not working, then you get it, right, you do it again. And you continually look at it and adjust it.
because that was basically my concern. With picking up, especially the two, the second one, was that more expensive or?
It was more expensive. That wasn't our decision maker, like the make or break, but that was one of the benefits of the
But the licensing was in the same ballpark. Like once you pass that licensing amount wasn't that much different, but it was more for the whole package, including the books. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
And once again, if you guys can speak into the microphones.
Oh, I'm not on this committee, so I didn't have it open. I'm sorry.
I'm just saying, in general.
You're the first person who's ever told me they couldn't hear me when I was speaking. You and I had a private conversation about licensing and how this is how in the digital age, the company, the textbooks companies are going forward
Right.
to continue to extract money out of their customers when we're not asking for as many physical copies of books. And I'm, this is where they are. This is where the publishers are right now. I think it'll probably still be where the publishers are for the most part in 6 years. I don't know if it's going to be this way forever, because they're still losing money, or they're crying poor, I should say. So I don't know if it's going to be this way for forever, but it's going to be this way for a while if we want to continue to offer the digital options for kids.
Okay. And one other thing with, I don't know if anyone has ever heard of the Tunnel to Tower organization. They give free curriculum from kindergarten through 12th grade on 9/11 and full experience that we had, and it's 100% free for teachers to use.
That's really cool.
Yes.
One thing, I don't know if you heard that, that is something that, it's good to know, but, one thing that especially the history teachers, felt like it was a lot of pressure for them to piece together the curriculum pieces on their own, and then perhaps miss something and be called to the carpet for having missed something or having presented something in a certain way. And so for them, having it having it all packaged is helpful.
But I would just say that as a bonus, there is
Absolutely.
a really good organization that has a full curriculum on just basically 9/11.
Yep.
So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Director, we were given 3 different books, and there was a book that I guess didn't align, they're saying. When I reviewed both these books, specifically this as one of my key complaints of this book is that it seems to be very, with current events in the last, I don't know, 10 years, it's very opinionated, which history should never be opinionated. It should be facts and that's it. I've seen a lot of inaccuracies. They put stuff in there that they thought was factual that now we're finding is not factual. And that, I just have a problem with that because then we're teaching our children things that are not true.
Can you give me can you show an example?
You gave me an example, and this is in the other book, I think.
Well, there's some in this book too. That's why I didn't like to get their notes back. So, yes, I can absolutely. So this one,
if you read every single thing that I read, 'cause I went after you told me that, I went after you too and looked. I had other people look, and it's the same. Any person who reads, I know you mentioned about Trump, how he didn't like how he was portrayed.
yes,
I looked at every other president as well, and then they put all the negatives and the positives about each one. That's what I
well,
was
that's
So it's good for everybody to see all
just the way that they made his demeanor, talked about the January 6th. It basically says during a speech in front of the White House, Trump asked supporters to march to the Capitol and stop the certification process. Not a problem. After arriving at the Capitol, their actions turned violent. Well, we're now finding that may or may not be true because we're getting video from what really happened. And they're saying that the rioters stormed the building and snatched their way into the Hall of Congress. And after we're now seeing videos, some of that is not true. And so we don't really fully know who some of those people were. Because to be honest with you, some of those supporters were just walking around. They didn't smash anything. So I don't have a problem them talking about January 6th and what happened, but to make it in like that, it's just some of the ways that they have talked about things that have happened. I just have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with teaching some of these things. I don't, because they're history, they're things that happen. We need to know some of these things so that we don't repeat some of these things. Totally understand that. It's just, I'm trying to find the other one for you.
But he said this is U.S. History 1 and it wouldn't cover all the way up to
I can't hear you.
It's in the book.
You said this was U.S. History 1, correct? So it doesn't go all the way up to?
So the textbook has stuff all the way, what
All the way up to
January.
January.
That material is in there.
Okay.
That material is in there. If you look at the book, it's this big and it has all the way up to pretty current, like she said, January 6th.
Question. I turned the news on today. Watched 2 different news sources, 2 totally different stories. That one I might align with, and the other one I don't. And I call my friend up, and it doesn't align with his. He likes this one, I like that one. And so certainly, I've seen it come out today. I don't know how soon they can get these books from being great published. I've been thinking it's got to take a year or 2.
Yeah.
Correct.
We have something next from January 6th, a year or 2. So the teacher, I imagine the teacher's going to have to take, and as more facts come out, have to make adjustments. So I'm just thinking that if it aligns with my thinking, it might not align with her thinking, it might not align with
Well,
his
and that's
thinking.
why I like the other book, Kevin, because the other book just said that there were rioters. There was no left or right. It was just, this is what happened.
Yeah,
And that's
Was
what
that
we
the
need
more
to teach
expensive
it.
one or?
That was
No.
one that they said didn't align with what we want.
Sequence, it's a sequence. But then again, too, I've had people that would read that and get sensitive to that. How dare you not tell the truth about January 6th? Because that's how they feel. Because that's the news that they watch. So I'm just saying that there's 2 sides to that coin in every situation.
And I'm gonna
Opinion is different than facts.
right, and I hear both sides of it, and my opinion, I've thought long and hard about this over the last, 2 months or whatever. And the thing is, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what's in the book, it's going to be how the teacher portrays it. So we have to put our faith in the people who are teaching it. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying I don't agree with some of the stuff. However, at the end of the day, let's say it was slanted one way or the other and the teacher didn't feel that way, they're going to adjust it anyway. They're going to, if that's what they choose to do.
They do just, right, more of this like Austin said,
We do have to
starting
move on to
from
finance.
Johnson.
Yeah.
So currently, the teachers have to find their own resources to teach about January 6th. And they can portray it any way they want currently.
Well, if we're taking January 6th as the example, I would argue January 6th, which is still being litigated and information is still coming out and so forth, is much more of a current event than it is history. I think it's difficult to even teach Obama as history.
Yeah.
Okay, you can teach events, but we don't typically know the impact of policies and so forth until 20-ish years later. And so we do spend some time with current events. Whether no matter who was president, we've spent time with current events. And I know one of the, I said, go find something, and then my recommendation is find a reputable news source. And then the question is, well, what's a reputable news source? I said, well, go find them now. Go find something, and then there's a guide that's out there. It's a media bias guide, and it's at the top center is this is fact-based, not opinion, not editorial, etc. Up towards the center. So the examples might be the Associated Press or even BBC or and so forth. And then it goes and it says, here's the liberal bias, or in some aspects, and here's the conservative bias. And then as it goes down, you get into the edges of the bell curve, and then out there is where, this might be things that are straight fabricated, or misleading, and so forth. And we talk about that. And again, I say, they need to recognize the difference between the reading an editorial or the reading facts. Okay, is it factual reporting, or is this some type of editorial spin? They need to recognize that, and so forth. Now, it's not a big focus of what we do. Usually we throw a half lesson in after a test, something like that, where we say, okay, let's talk about some current events. So teaching, I feel it's a very important skill to be able to recognize bias. So that is something we try to teach. It's difficult. It's not easy because, and that's the other thing. Social media. We live in echo chambers, and I recently was looking at my Twitter, and I'm really getting fed things that are supposed to fire me up. They're recommended for me, and I realized no, they're trying to fire me up, and I started to ignore it, and I then went to who am I following? Where am I just getting fact-based report? And that's a skill they're going to have to develop in general. But like I said, January 6th to me is more current event than it is history. And our focus of this book is US 1.
Okay. I am being given the warning that we need to move on to finance. So unless somebody has something else, we're going to end it at...
I only have to answer one question.
Oh.
When you re-up licenses like this, it's about $4,000 a year.
Shane, 4. All right.
It's better than what I thought it was.
All right. Bid high. All right. So that ends the curriculum and instruction meeting at 6:59.